All right, good evening, everyone. So today I will be talking about picking up where I left off on my last stream. One of the points I made is, are the events canon? So when I say like the events, I mean like the limited time events, like Loyalty's Requiem, Wish to the Winds, Kindness and Captivity, Fire Emblem, Lost Heroes, and Kindred Ties, all those events. So the question is, are those canon in the main campaign? So either all of them are, some of them are, or none of them are. And it could also stand to reason that the main campaign is canon to the events, but the events are not canon to the main campaign. So I have sketched out a link, like a chart to connect everything together. And you'll see here at the middle of this image that I'm drawing is the main campaign. So I'm going to be today linking through all the different bits of stories and information that we have to find out what has to be canon to the main campaign, what could be canon to the main campaign, and what makes sense to be canon to the main campaign. And I also have pulled up, I believe, let's see, right. So this is the wiki page with the list of events. So I'll kind of go through this afterwards and explain my thoughts. And if any of you have any ideas in the chat, feel free to chime in, because it's quite possible that I missed something and I don't want to overlook any details. All right. So yes, hello everyone. Let's see. Yes. Hello, Jose Peralta. Hello, Tegan. Let's see. I was kind of surprised looking back at my previous stream. It doesn't look like it saved the chat. So I don't know if that's a setting or not. Hello, Coco. Hello, Ixis. But yeah, the Fire Emblem event would break a lot of Fire Emblem Heroes and Dragalia canon. Yeah. I definitely don't think that the Fire Emblem Heroes event is canon to Fire Emblem Heroes. And we know for a fact that the main campaign has to be canon to the Fire Emblem Heroes event. From what I have seen, there is nothing pointing to the inevitability that the Fire Emblem Heroes events are canon. We know that Fire Emblem 1 happens before Fire Emblem 2. So Lost Heroes happens before Kindred Ties, and those are in a canon timeline. But yeah, so as I draw this out, I'll draw this down in the corner here. So this will be kind of the notation I use. How thick is this? 10 pixels? Is that what I used over here? Yeah. So, this is going to be the notation I use as I draw this out. All right. So, let me grab my brush. That's not quite as thick, and it's the wrong color. So 10 pixels is, I think, the width. Also, I noticed last time my vocal audio is a bit loud, and it kept surpassing the audio threshold. So let me know if I'm too loud or too quiet, and I'll try and fix it. All right, so a relationship like this one. Let me draw these out first so you know the difference. Doot, 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 doot. So these are arrows pointing to different things. So this is like a thing 1, this is thing 2. So this kind of relationship. Let's see. So a line like this is codependent. That means, oh gosh, that's pixely. That means a straight line with no arrow between two things. These things they require one another to exist. For instance, let's see. I had an example of this. Let me just look at my chart. So like the main campaign and the chapters in the campaign are going to be codependent. Let's see. Oh gosh, I need where's my pencil? Where did I put it? There it is. Yeah. So let's see. Sorry, this is a very complicated chart, as you guys will see in a little bit. So, gosh, there aren't very many of these connections. Anyway, basically, what a solid line with no arrows means is that the two things are interconnected. So, for instance, here it is: kindness in captivity and Melsa. Like, Melsa is a huge part of kindness in captivity, and kindness in captivity is the introduction of Melsa. So the character and the event are inherently linked. You can't have one without the other. So the second one. So basically, if an object is pointing to another one, it means that the thing it's pointing to, the first object needs it or proves it. So, for instance, let's see. So, I'll have like Gala Elisan. Oh, and also spoilers for a lot, not a whole lot, but a lot of character stories. Particularly the Galas. The Gala character stories will have spoilers for those. As well as, of course, spoilers for the main campaign through chapter 14. So yeah, so if something is pointing to something else, it needs it or proves it. And if something is pointing back, it means that the object that is being pointed to can exist without the second one. So yeah. So going back to the main campaign. So this is at the center of everything. So we're basically going to be linking things. And the way this works is we can only look backwards in time. So for instance, chapter 5 could happen without chapter 6 happening, but chapter 6 needs chapter 5 to exist previously. Therefore, the existence of chapter 6 proves chapter 5. That's like a very bare bones example because obviously both of those exist, and we know that they're both canon from being in the main campaign. But let me find a different example. So we know that in chapter 14, Volk makes an appearance. But Volk also makes an appearance outside of chapter 14. So chapter 14 alone does not prove Volk's existence, but because he's in chapter 14, and they recognize him in chapter 14, that means that Volk's introduction as the Agito fight comes before chapter 14 in the timeline. So we're starting at chapter 14. We can work backwards because we know that Volk's introduction had to happen beforehand. So let me begin to draw this. And I considered drawing this whole thing out beforehand, but this will look like a jumbled mess by the end, and I wanted to go through it piece by piece so that it's more understandable. So I'm going to put chapter 14 here. So I'll have chapter 14. We're also going to have over here chapter 13. And I'm going to go ahead and put some of the chapters around here, and I'll link things to them later. We're also going to need chapter 11. Did I have chapter 12 on here? Yeah, but it points in a different direction. I'm going to try and keep this pretty organized. I'm not sure, because I'm probably going to add things to this as I go of things I missed. We're going to have chapter 13 is already on here. I have it twice on my thing. Whoops. So yeah, this is just going to be chapter 12 over here then. All right, yeah, so I'm going to have to move this real quick. 1 second while I edit this. Gosh, that's going to look like a jumbled mess. I need to move that in the final design. And then I also need chapter 8 because that has some things. Put that one up here. And I need chapter 10 and chapter 12. And I think that's all the chapters I need. The Manafont Wormprint confirms that Manafonts are canon. Okay, so Wormprints and Castle Stories are also questionable canonicity to the main campaign. So one thing I will be doing here today is looking at what confirms certain Castle Stories. For instance, I mentioned Kindness in Captivity and Melsa earlier on. Well, we know that in the Castle Story, the Atoner is when Melsa and Sylvia canonically arrive at the Halidom. So I'm going to assume that anytime we are shown a character being introduced, that is how they are introduced if it's canon. So if, for instance, if they are canon to the main campaign, if we have been shown their introduction, then that introduction will be canon. There's not a different introduction that... I have 2 chapter 12s? Oh, darn it. That's not chapter 12. That's chapter 2. Darn it. Gosh, my handwriting is so bad. Okay, let's see. So, chapter 2. No 3, no 4, no 5, no 6. So 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so each of these appears once. Good. All right. But anyway, so if we've seen a character being introduced, then there will be no other possible way they have been introduced canonically, is what I'm assuming. So I think that's a fair assumption. What? Stop placing it. I need to stamp it. Come on. Let me grab it. Let me grab it. There we go. Stamp. There we go. Now I move this. Stamp. Are adventurer stories canon? It's a good question. I can prove some adventurer stories are canon, but so here's the thing. There will be a character later on down this list where the character is introduced in an event, but we don't. I can't say for certain if their adventurer story is canon, but their adventure story being canon not only makes a lot of sense, it points to a couple of other events also very likely being canon. I'll get to that when I get there. I don't want to jump ahead to many things and make too many tangents, because then this is just going to be one jumbled mess of a video. So I'm not going to draw any lines between these, because obviously all of these are related to one another. But I will be drawing lines between other things later on that have some big connections. All right, so, yeah, so let's see. So let's begin with the most recent chapter, I suppose. So chapter 14 and 13 both introduced us to Volk. So we know Volk has his own introduction, but it's in these chapters that he's confirmed to be part of the main campaign. So I'm going to put him here. And so chapter 14 is going to point to him. So, for instance, with this, chapter 14 is pointing to Volk. So chapter 14 needs Volk, but Volk can exist without chapter 14. That's what the arrows mean. So yeah, so chapter 14 100% includes Volk, but Volk's introduction does not include chapter 14. All right, so with chapter 13 also points to Volk. So also in chapter 13 we met Ciela. So Ciela is also canon. So of course, like moving forward, all the Agito are canon, but these are the only two we've seen, and I'll add the Agito as a whole to this in a moment. Oh gosh, yeah. There's going to be a little bit of crisscrossing here. Basically, the way I'm going to do crisscrossing is I'm going to do a line break. Oh, not like that. A line break over something, so it'll be like that. And so like this will be a continuous line, and it won't touch this line. Is Dragalia Life canon? I don't think so. If Dragalia Life is canon, I can't prove it here. How many dragons does Yuden canonically have? He only canonically has 5. Because even in all the things I'm going to prove here today, actually, there are a few more I can almost confirm. Like, there is one... There are a couple sizable jumps here. Because, like, I'm going to tell you now that I can only canonically prove one event. I can get really close on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 other events that I can get really close to and have strong evidence for, but I don't have a solid, concrete, 100% like link to. So, chapter 13 has Ciela in it. So I'm gonna go off this direction real quick because this is a small branch. So Ciela, in her story, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, calls Elisan the Grand Paladin. I misspelled that. There's 1 L. So Gala Elisan would, by that logic, be canon. I'm going to try and space these out a little bit just in case I need to crisscross some things. So, we have Gala Elisan. So, in Gala Elisan's story, we also meet Tobias. Not super important, but he's there. He's canon. And then also, Gala Elisan's story is a prelude to Gala Alex. Although Gala Elisan herself does not prove Gala Alex. So, we know from this that Ciela requires Gala Elisan, Gala Elisan requires Tobias, and Gala Alex requires Elisan. So basically, to prove something canon, from the main campaign to a point, you have to follow a direct link or an arrow. If you can follow a direct link or an arrow to something, it is canon to the main campaign. You cannot move the opposite direction of an arrow, because we can't prove that Gala Alex is canon to the main campaign yet, from what I've seen. She's a bit too recent in release, and we'd also need an Agito or something else to like name drop her. So I am gonna try and follow this. I'm trying to decide if there's a way to touch this up. So I'll probably stick I'll probably do this next. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put Agito. So I'm not gonna point to Vulcan Cielo with this because they should obviously be Agito, and that might make it complicated. So we have the Agito from chapter 14. So let me go ahead and connect this. So we have the Agito. I might as well just let that connect since that's an Agito branch anyway. But the Agito, from that we can infer Kayan. And I double-checked Kayan's story earlier. It does appear to be a direct continuation of Gala Luca's. Like, in Gala Luca's story, he works to set up a refuge for all types of races, like Rockins, humans, and Sylvans. And Kayan's story literally opens with him killing a human, a Sylvan, and a Rockin. And the Rockin says, like, after all we did to, like, set this up with Luca. And, like, that just seems like way too much of a direct parallel, like an intentional parallel, to ignore. So, with Kayan, Kayan himself is a Keelan. So I'm going to slit that right there. And then Kayan, of course, points to Gala Luca. Alright. So let's highlight that. This. And Gala Luca. So, but Kayan points to the Agito. Alright. So I think it's kind of like that. Let me make sure I got key in. So, Nope, I think I got that backwards. So I know that one, and I think it's that one. Yeah. So, Kion needs the Agito, Kion needs Keelan, Kion needs Galaluka to all exist for his story to be canon. So, Hildegard. Yeah, Hildegard also appears in the main campaign. I'll get to that. Gally ties into Julieta and Tobias. Yeah, I'll get to Julieta. I'm not putting Julieta with Gala Elasan because she has a much closer tie to the main campaign, which is Chapter 11. She appears directly in the Chapter 11 interlude, so I'm going to tie her over there as opposed to Gala Elasan. Like, some of these things will obviously have ties to one another that I'm not going to connect because it'll just make the chart a huge jumbled mess, and I couldn't think of any quick chart makers that would make this easy. I'm just drawing this in MS Paint. Let's see. So, where to next? So, let's see. The Agito. So, from the Agito, we also get the twins. I'm just going to call them the twins. No, I'm going to do Ayaha and Otaha. So we'll do the twins. I'm going to put them there. Then we have Laxi. Does Laxi connect to anything else? No, Laxi's right there. And then, yeah, we're going to have Hildegard down here. So, let me go ahead and connect in these. So we're going to have Laxi from Chapter 11, Ayaha and Otaha from their introduction, and Hildegard. So Ayaha and Otaha are not canon to the main campaign yet. Whoops, whatever. So that goes that way. Chapter 11 confirms Laxi, and Ayaha and Otaha need Laxi to exist. Chapter 11 also confirms Hildegard. And, of course, in the same interlude, we got Julieta. Put that kind of close, because this is going to get a bit cluttered in a little bit. So now we have Julieta. Alright, so this is where we're at so far. Otoha. There we go, fixed it. Let's see. New Year events are canon. I'll get to that. I can't find any direct links, but if you can, please let me know. It's questionable. Character spec race is canon. Yeah. Sylvan. I don't know. Have we had any Rockins or Keelans appear in the main campaign? I don't think we have. Because none of the main cast are Rockin or Keelan, so we only have certain events. So let's see, where to next? So that one connects to Chapter 12, right? No. Yeah? No, Chapter 13, right. So I have something to connect to Chapter 13 and Chapter 12. No, Chapter 14. No, 12 and 13. Shoot, where am I going to put this? It's already so cluttered. Yeah, I just kind of want to put this over here. So we'll just do this. And here we have the Void Dragons. So we know from chapters, the end of Chapter 12 and then Chapter 13 that Void Dragons are canon. And so this would then, of course, I'm going to see if I can knock this out in one text thing. Nah, better to do it in just individual. So we're going to have Agni. We're going to have Zephyr. We're going to have Poseidon. spelled that correctly? I did. And then we're going to have Jeanne d'Arc. And also I'm going to fit up here. We're going to have Nidhogg. That one I'm not sure I spelled correctly. I can never remember if it has 2 Ds or 2 Gs. I did put these too close together. Whoops. Oh, whoops. All right, so we're gonna have all those. And then this points like that. This points like, nope, that's wrong. Wrong way. All right, so now we have the Void Dragons, approved from Chapter 13. Has 2 Gs. Ah, I got it wrong. I was like, I never get this right. I can just just gonna fix that real quick. Boom. There we go. Perfect. Yeah. So what is next? So from chapter 12. Chapter 12 confirms for us 5 characters. And some of you will kind of see where I'm going with this with the placement of them. So we have Verica. Noah. Wake. Whoops, that's a bit close. Come on, there we go. Eileen. And Karina all appear at some point in this chapter. All right, hope those aren't too close. Let's see. The twins are not rockin' as far as I can tell, because from what we've seen, rockins only have horns on the side of their head, where the twins have horns in their forehead. As far as if the twins are demons, we do have precedent for demons with more Sayari, but then the twins would likely be extremely more powerful. Are the newly 3-star adventurers canon? It's too early to say. I think that they made that choice because they will be, and also the fact that they're making it so whenever we get a new banner, you have to watch the first chapter of their adventurer story. I think that's their way of saying these characters are now canon, at least to events though. That doesn't mean they're canon to the main campaign. So chapter 12 shows us all of these. And this means that anytime we've seen this character introduced, that story is canon. So Eileen's first story, it's canon. Wake's first story, it's canon. Karina's first story, it's canon. Lara Noah is an interesting case because when she appears in the story, she's brought by Cerise. So technically speaking, we don't have to have the... I actually don't have Lara Noah either, so I haven't read her story. So if there are any characters in her story that you guys want to let me know, well, I guess the other thing is we can't say if for a fact that her story is canon. But yeah. Anyway, so anytime that we've seen this character introduced, is probably canon. But with Lara Noah, there's a way to get around it with the fact that we don't see anything about Lara Noah as a character. There's no interaction. The prince never proves that he knows who she is. So, like, these other people are hanging around the Halidom, so they've met the prince. So their stories are canon. But Lara Noah, she just shows up in the battle, and Cerise brings her, which means it could have just been Cerise, like, going to her village to recruit her for that fight, as opposed to the Hunt for Harmony actually being a canon event. That being said... Wait, come on. Text. Let me get my capitalization proper here. Hunt for Harmony. Even though I can't point to it, this goes here and points away from it to Lara Noah. And of course Cerise is in there too, but Cerise is also in the main campaign. Like, obviously the main cast are not going to fall in this list because I'm not trying to prove they're canon. Hopefully that speaks for itself. There's more down here. I'll come back to it later. Once I start getting into the real good stuff. So, Chapter 8 actually doesn't have too many things, but has 2 things. So, Golimars. I can't say for a fact that Golimars' story is canon. I don't have him, haven't read it, don't know. But we do know that Golimars is in, or Mars is in Chapter 8. Also, Hybern Hilda is in Chapter 8. There we go. So, we know that these dragons are both in Chapter 8. They both make an appearance. In Chapter 10, we get... At the end of Chapter 10, anyway. And then moving forward, of course, we get... Gala Uden. Sorry. Gala Prince. Yeah, it's really funny. Like, all the official Dragalia Law stuff refers to him as the Prince and not Uden. Even though Uden's technically his kind of canon name. So, the thing is, the arrow's going this way. Because, like, the Gala Prince needs Chapter 10, but Chapter 10 does not need his story, I guess, is the way it's going. So, I don't know. That's why I'm doing it. So, it's not that Chapter 10 needs Gala Prince, but that his story... Well, I don't know. They're kind of like the same thing. So, I'm just gonna... maybe it's like that. I don't know. His story doesn't really introduce anything. It's just like a character development moment. So I'm just gonna leave it like that for now. But yeah. So that's actually it for Chapter 10. Chapter 2. So let's see. Chapter 2 introduces us to 2 characters. One of which is Harl. The other of which is Leaf. Leaf will not be on this chart, but Gala Leaf will. Harl is only on this chart not to prove his canonicity, but to point to a few things. Specifically, Gala Leaf. Is Gala Leaf canon? Because, of course, he, like, dresses up in his outfit in Chapter 13, but what about his story? There are things to suggest that his story is canon. So, I will add those here. Let's see. There's going to be just 2 more things here. All right, yeah. So, next to Harl, we're going to have Gala Leaf. And then the thing connecting them is the Black Ravens. So, with this. Are dragons canonically related to fairies? I mean, they're distant relatives. Well, yeah, I think they are. I think, like, lore bits that we get like that in castle stories are canon. But, like, specific story beats might not be. So, for instance, the castle story where Not sits on Megartzimer, like, that story might not be canon, but the lore we got in it might be. Also, let's see. Is the Chapter 14 unit canonically with my party? Yeah, so the Chapter 14 unit is, of course, canon, because they're part of the main campaign. All right, so that's a little bit close to draw an arrow, but I'm going to do my best. So, chapter 14 contains the Black Ravens. We know that. The Black Ravens require Harl, because Harl leads them. Chapter 2 has Harl in it. Harl's introduced here, so these two are kind of just connected. Harl's part of the main campaign, so I don't really need to justify that. But Harl, Gala Leaf Story also has Harl in it, and also has the Black Ravens in it. So, of course, Gala Leaf, the arrows are pointing away, so nothing's pointing towards him. However, the Black Ravens are named in Gala Leaf's story before Chapter 14 comes out, or before it came out. So that was an important detail. All right, that closes off this area, I think. So I'm gonna save this real quick. Let's see. That's also in the wrong folder. Give me a sec. This folder. Yeah, let's do this folder. All right. All right. So I saved this as a temporary file just in case I accidentally close something, and I really don't have to redraw all this. So the next big link is from Volk. So you'll see Volk is over here on his lonesome. There is a very important link here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this all rides on the fact that Ranzel is only named as a general, a commander in the prince's army in his Gala story. Because I was looking through the main campaign, I didn't finish yet, looking for if the prince asks him to command his army. And I didn't find anything. Because I remember when Gala Ranzel came out, it's his character introduction was he's been announced the prince's commander of his army or something. So actually let me pull up the wiki real quick and see if it has his introduction. So he is a wind sword Gala Ranzel. All right. Yep. He's been appointed a commander in the New Alberian army. This is literally what we care about. So with this, we need this to not be declared in the main campaign. If it's declared in the main campaign, this whole link falls apart and we lose a lot of things. However, I'm pretty sure it doesn't. But basically, with that, from here, Volk in his story calls out Ranzel for being the son of a nobleman, the whoever looks over New Albeir, a number of titles, but among them lists him being the general of in the prince's army, a commander in his army. So because Volk calls him out as that, Ciela calls out Elasan for being the Grand Paladin, we know from here that Volk proves that Gala Ranzel exists. And I promise that Gala Ranzel has way more canonicity importance than he does as a playable unit. Rip Gala Ranzel. Sorry, your kid isn't very good these days. Never got him, wouldn't know. Anyway, so we have Gala Ranzel. So, in Gala Ranzel's story, two other characters in the Halidom appear, as well as 3 more characters being name dropped. So, I'll go through these maybe in order of importance, I don't know. So we'll start down here with Nicholas is canon. Here we have Francesca was named. Come on. We have Althemia was named. Malka was in the story. And then the important one, Ramona. And from Ramona, Ramona also said in the story, her and her sisters, which confirms that both of her sisters are canon. Now, I can't say for sure if their stories are canon, but if you remember what I was saying about the introduction of a character has to be canon if we see them, you'll kind of get where I'm going here. once I finish making this look nice, because I want to save this as an image when it's finally done. So, Volk requires Galaranzel. Galaranzel requires Malka, requires Nicholas, requires Francesca, requires Althemia, requires Ramona, requires Renee, and requires Reyna. And then these ones will have the solid type link because their existences are instrumental to one another. So, if you remember, the introduction of these characters, well, aside from being introduced, Ramona's introduced as a gameplay mechanic at the very start of the game. But story-wise, they first meet the prince in an event, Flames of Reflection. So, here we have our first instance of an event that has to be canon. So, and then of course, this is going to be a solid line because this is how they meet. So, we have Flames of Reflection. Now, of course, this event has to have a couple other characters in it, being, of course, Arctos the dragon. Come on. Come on. Right there. Nope, actually, nope, sorry. I made a note when I drew this to flip this part of the thing because it's going to make it look a lot nicer later on. So we have Arctos over here. And, of course, the other character. Yes, Lasri. Lasri's an important character. I haven't read Lasri's story, but I had it explained to me the other day. And I realized it has a very important piece of lore in it. So, the largest problem here, there's a small leap with this, is that I can't prove Lasri's adventurer story happens. I can only prove Lasri's existence. So, we'll connect Lasri to this event. We'll connect Arctos to this event. And so, like, all of these are solid lines because all of these have to exist together. Flames of Reflection requires all of these characters. And all of these characters require Flames of Reflection. So, Rock-Uns are canon because... You're right, Rock-Uns are canon because of Lasri. Let me, I didn't even think about that. Alright, so yeah. Lasri confirms Rockin'. So, one thing, spoilers for Lasri's story, as far as I know them, but basically this was explained to me the other day, is Lasri's trying to, like, get the upper hand on the Smith sisters in the next edition of, I believe it's called the Golden Anvil, their yearly thing, that they're trying to, you know, make the best weapon, and, like, compete to win the competition as, like, the best smiths. However, the Golden Anvil, if I remember correctly, is an annual event. And the first one happened in Flames of Reflection. So, with that... we can confirm here that there's been a year in between. So, you get where I'm going with this? A full year? What else? What else do we know has a full year between them? The New Year's events. So, again, I can't confirm that Lasri's story is a thing. So, I'm actually going to append this that Lasri needs Flames of Reflection. So, Lasri needs Flames of Reflection, and Flames of Reflection needs Lasri, but not Lasri's story. So, unfortunately, this is a bit of a leap, but you'll see the rest of the links I'm going to make here are going to fill out like this entire area of the grid and even loop back down over here. So there's a lot of links here. And then once I finish drawing this out, I'll take input from the chat and see if I missed anything, because there are other events that are not on this chart because I couldn't link them to anything. For instance, I'll go ahead and say A Wish to the Winds. I don't think it has any links to anything. Like, the easiest events to prove are events that have alts in them. Like the summer events, for instance, have alts of characters, which you might remember are down here. So I'll come back to that later, but right now I want to focus on getting this area done. So we know that a Clawful Caper and Fortune from Afar have 1 year between them. So I'll go ahead and do this. Because, of course, like, the only connection that they have to this is that it's a 1 year time skip. And we know that these two are connected, or rather, we know that the Clawful Caper requires Fortune from Afar. So from here, I'm going to have to space these out a little bit. We got the Worm Clans. Let's see. We got, I believe it's the Mouse Clan. And we have the Boar Clan. I'll put this up here because that's going to point to a number of characters. Let's see, and I'm going to go ahead and finish this up because this is a specific thought before I move on to something else. We have the Mouse Clan, the Boar Clan, and the Worm Clans as a whole. So, yeah, these are intermittently linked. This is our like only link to these things. So all of these are pretty much linked together. I am going to put arrows on these, but pretty much, yeah, that's the whole thing. And so the Worm Clans, that's misspelled. I think that's the correct spelling. So, oh yeah, hey, the Triforce, that's funny. Yeah, Amaterasu is the head of the head of Hinamoto. So is now added to this. And here the arrows kind of just don't exist because we are kind of just connecting things that we haven't seen in story yet. But we know that the Worm Clans require Amaterasu. So actually, but like Amaterasu needs the Worm Clans to be in the story. So that's kind of where that goes. So, going with the Mouse Clan. The Mouse Clan confirms for us several others, of course, being Mitsuhide, Cheeto, Hanabusa, and Daiko Kuten. And before we say anything else, yeah, these are just the Mouse Clan members, so Nobunaga. Can anyone remember the name of Nobunaga's dragon off the top of their head? I know it was name dropped in Nobunaga's story. I think it was Nobunaga's story. It might have been Mitsuhide's story, actually. So, that's just kind of how that goes. Oh, and right, there's another one on here. Come on. Ibisu. No, that's too close. The cat dragon is in the Clawful Caper event. Alright. Susano. Alright. I'll put that in here. Why can't I just click the text tab? And it just, lets me put down text. Why do I have to click this text icon over here? Get it together, Paint. Alright, so that is that side. So over here, we have the Boar Clan, which of course is Mr. Yasu himself. His dragon. His girlfriend. His retainer. And his bodyguard. For lack of a better title. I'm just going to link all of these together because they pretty much just all exist together. Whoops, that went too far. There we go. So we have the Boar Clan. Now, if we assume that Fortune from Afar and Clawful Caper are together, what is one small detail in both of these things that has to have a prerequisite? And this is kind of an out there thing, but it has to exist. So where am I going to put this? I guess let's put it over here. Let me pull up the wiki real quick to make sure I spelled that correctly. Requiem. Okay. Yes, I did. So, yeah. You got it, Kohaku. It's Otherworldly Fragments. In Loyalty's Requiem, Otherworldly Fragments are not recognized. When they're first introduced, the group is like, what are those? And then Cleo's like, I think those are Otherworldly Fragments. But then in every raid event afterwards, they automatically recognize Otherworldly Fragments, which is a huge detail. So, we can draw that and say that that event requires this event. Of course, I'll put text along this line. There we go. So, by going from the main campaign to Chapter 14, to Volt, to Gala Rounzel, to Ramona, to Flame to Reflection, to Lazari, to the 1 year time skip, to Fortune from Afar and Clawful Caper, we can now go to Loyalty's Requiem. So, Loyalty's Requiem has two things. First of which is Celiera. You get where I'm going with this. Celiera, you can kindly go way out here. Come on. Where's my grab arrow? There it is. Celiera's kind of going to go way out here because, of course, she appears somewhere else. The other thing we need is Pele. Pele's going to go way out here because Pele also appears somewhere else. So, these Pele and Celiera are not inherently tied. but they are both inherently tied to Loyalty's Requiem. So, I'm not going to put a line between these two, but I will put both of them to Loyalty's Requiem. So, Pele. What does Pele have in common, aside from being a welfare dragon, with Sylvia and Phantom? Well, so, as you all are guessing or already know the answer, it's Audric. The beginning of Audric's story, he faces off against the three of them. And what do you know about Audric? There we go, Fractured Futures. There it is. So again, this whole thing hinges on Lasri, like literally this whole thing hinges on Lasri's event being canon. If Lasri's story is canon, we get a 1-year time skip, which heavily incentivizes, or heavily creates evidence for, I don't know the word for it, that these are also canon, because 1-year time skip makes these seem much more likely. And then, but with those being a thing, Loyalty's Requiem, and then Pele to Audric's story is also a bit of a jump, because Pele being canon does not prove Audric's story is canon, it's just Audric's story proves Pele is canon. Additionally, Fractured Futures does not prove Audric's story, although the two are pretty inherently tied. But the other thing that goes here is Kronos. And Parallel Zodiac. So I'm going to start drawing my circles and drawing in the connections. Why does it just stop at the... What? I don't know why it just like deselects it sometimes. It's weird. There we go. As a rocket, I'm sure carrying that much is nothing to Lasri. It's like, okay, Lasri, you're carrying the entire canon of the game. All right. So Audric's story requires Pele, requires Sylvia, requires Phantom. Audric is tied to Parallel Zodiac. Parallel Zodiac is tied to Fractured Futures. Fractured Futures requires Audric, and Audric requires Fractured Futures. Kronos is tied to all of these as well. I'm just going to connect that because they're all connected. It's an interconnected web with these four. So yeah. But I kind of want to make this an arrow because, like, Fractured Futures doesn't require Audric's story. But from here, we have Kindness in Captivity. So I'm going to put off to the side a little bit here. I'm going to... I need to put something. So Pele actually doesn't connect to anything else. So I'm going to put Kindness in Captivity right there. And of course, then we have Melsa. And I'm going to go ahead and circle these because I have another point after I talk about these. So, Sylvia and Melsa are linked. Each one requires the other. When Melsa's introduced, she's looking for Sylvia. Sylvia revolves around Melsa because the two are like besties. Kindness and Captivity. The two of them are inherently linked because Kindness and Captivity is Melsa's introduction. And I messed that line up. There we go. So, these three are linked together. Kind of like over here with an extra link. But, as you may know, these two have another canon meeting with the prince. They have two of them. So, I didn't actually go back and read the story, but I remember it pretty well. that this castle story is when they go to the Halidom. Like, they meet the prince and everyone, and, like, Cerise and everyone in Kindness and Captivity, but in this castle story, they go to... Can I use shift to draw a straight line? That's an excellent question. The answer is no. I cannot use shift to draw a straight line. This is Paint 3D, not regular MS Paint, so I don't know if that has to do with anything. But yeah, so both of these connect to the castle story, the Atoner. So that would make this story potentially canon. So this one actually kind of has arrows going this way, but it's still inherently tied into their arrival at the Halidom, which actually needs to happen for this. So I'm actually going to erase those, because this has to happen for this to connect to this. So I'm going to leave this off. So Phantom. Phantom has a couple dead ends, but it does have some ends to die. One of the dead is Thanatos. Thanatos is, of course, the god of the dead or whatever, but he's just kind of a... He's one of my favorite... He's one of my favorite villains in the game, particularly because it was like the first raid we got where the raid boss was a character instead of just some enemy monster. And of course, I also have Felicia. I was about to ask, who was the dragon again? And then I was like, oh yeah, I already put it on this thing. Dude, there we go. So, these ones are, of course, inherently tied, because Thanatos is part of Felicia's character introduction to Phantom and Thanatos. And I can't believe I forgot the... No, I'll leave those. I forgot the event. So the event is A Waltz with Fate. If you're clicking in the background, my sister is trying to be deadly quiet. What do you need?
I want some Oreos.
Open the pantry, Jen. Don't do it quiet. Do it quick. Where did A Waltz with Fate go? Where did my... I look away from my computer for like 1 second. Ah. Alright, so, and of course this one's like Fractured Futures. It connects to like, whoops. Wait, I can just move that. Haha, there we go. This connects to all of these. So these are all inherently connected. Saving. There we go. So, this kind of concludes this little area over here, but you'll notice this little low-hanging branch, and that brings us back to here. The thing that Celiera, Verica, and Julieta all have in common. So, again, these arrows are going to be pointing up to the characters instead of down to the event, because the event requires the characters, but the characters canon to the main campaign do not require the event. So these are going to be they're not going to be canonically connected, but they very well could have that connection. And the fact that these are all so closely tied together, kind of like, this isn't meant to show that these are canon. These are meant to show that if they are canon, how close they connect, and like to kind of point towards them being canon as opposed to like just free floating out there. So these two are inherently connected. We know this because A Crescendo of Courage is a direct sequel to A Splash of Adventure, and A Splash of Adventure ends with Siren approaching Yuden being like, can I ask you a favor? And that favor is what happens in Crescendo of Courage. Someone just pointed out that Valentine's Confections has Hildegard in it, which I guess I can go ahead and tie that off because that is on its own. So this is literally just going to be its own little bubble sitting here. Now go away. This. That, and then this points to Hildegard. Yep, that's it. That's that entire thing. That's as much as we can prove. So, this one. That's what we get. But with this, we have a couple of things we can prove. First of all, the event characters. Estelle Best Girl is canon in Splash of Adventure. And I say that jokingly because all the characters are good. Barbary is canon as Splash of Adventure. Siren is canon in both. So I'll put her down here. And another thing. Erasmus. And if I remember correctly, Nina the Shopkeep shows up in a Splash of Adventure. So, this one doesn't introduce all these characters. So, like, they already know who Nina is. So, Splash of Adventure needs Nina, but Nina doesn't need Splash of Adventure. Erasmus is introduced, and Barbary is introduced, so these lines are solid. And Splash of Adventure needs Estelle, but Estelle is introduced in her character story. So, of course, that doesn't point there, but these do point to there. Siren is introduced in both of these, so she's inherently tied to both. So then, let's see what else. I think the only thing I'm missing here. There we go. A very large jump, but a full connection to be sure. Unfortunately, it is just an arrow pointing to Celiera. But it is also joined... I don't know if I need to connect it to... I'm not going to connect all these characters to Crescendo of Courage, except for Siren, because like they're inherently connected already through Splash of Adventure. So, let me read through. Popstar, Siren, and Alt. I'm not counting Alt as separate characters because obviously, like, we have Celiera and Summer Celiera. So Popstar, Siren, and Siren are the same individual for the purposes of canon. Kind of like Dragonil Jeanne d'Arc is regular Jeanne d'Arc. So, like, I'm not going to put Dragonil Jeanne d'Arc down here and connect it to regular Jeanne d'Arc. We just care about regular Jeanne d'Arc. So that being said, Jeanne d'Arc doesn't necessarily have a dragon pact with Yuden, but we know that Jeanne d'Arc as a species of dragon exists in the world because of Chapter 13 and Chapter 12. So I think this is as far as I made it in my notes. Let me double check and make sure I have everything. Yeah, I got that. So I got those characters. All right. So if you guys have anything else... Nina the Shopkeep shows up in Summer Cleo's story. So the thing with like characters like Summer Cleo is I can't prove their stories exist unless another story that we can get to from the main campaign relies on those. So the stories of alt characters are a lot harder to prove than the existence of that alt. And even the existence of that alt is a stretch. So, yeah. But yeah, so Nina appears in the summer events, and I think that's the only place that Nina appears as a character in the story. Let's see. Doesn't the Chapter 14 unit existing prove the whole Fractured Futures event? It does not, because the Fractured Futures event could happen or could not happen, and Xena's story would still happen the same. The Fractured Futures event... And like, sorry, I am going to start talking about the Chapter 14 unit with full spoilers moving forward. So, of course she appears in Fractured Futures, but there's kind of like a branching timeline thing where she dies or doesn't die. Let me pull this up real quick. I drew this for my last live stream, I'm pretty sure. Where did I save it is the question. Because I know I saved it somewhere. This one? It is this one. All right. So basically, ignore this no Xena interference. I'm pretty sure I got that wrong. This is basically the start of the timeline. And so, whoops, nope. How does zoom? I can't just not scroll through things. Anyway, so basically right here we have the prologue. And so either Xena lives and I'm trying to remember how I described this. So basically either Xena lives, and this is not the main campaign. This is Xena going back to her own reality, and her reality happens. So Xena's reality happens here. This is not the main campaign. This is from Xena's perspective. So Kronos doesn't kill her, and she returns to her own reality and tries again and tries again and tries again. Or, alternatively, Kronos comes from this point in the timeline and kills Xena, so Xena dies. And that would be Fractured Futures, because Xena doesn't appear in the event. And so this one has two branches as well. Either Yuden and Audric fail to defeat Kronos, or don't attack him in the first place. Doesn't matter. And that creates this branch here, where the Kronos lives past this point and then kills Xena, and it's a circular time loop here. Or they succeed, and a new branch is created, and that becomes Audric's story. The X here represents everyone dying. Because if Kronos succeeds, everyone dies, and at the end of Audric's story, everyone dies. Xena's reality is yet to be seen. And then the main campaign is like kind of on like a three-dimensional level with this. So, I don't know. It's really confusing which timeline you're looking at, and I haven't drawn it all out yet. It's very confusing. But yeah, so this is as far as I've gotten with the events that are canon. I'm going to take a moment to read chat and see what you guys have been saying. Oh, whoops. Let's see. Oh, I forgot something. That's right. Up here, the existence of the worm clans. So, the new event does not rely on anything, or nothing relies on it, so I can't prove it's canon, but it does rely on Hinamoto. So, it has a connection there. And of course, this one proves the existence of the festival planners. And I'm not going to bother with the event characters. I don't know enough about them yet. So like Eugene and what's her name? All right. Let's see. All right. So that's where rhythmic resolutions comes in. And yeah, so the missing aux leaders mentioned at the end. Yeah, I kind of glossed over specifically what he said, but I knew that they were definitely hinting at something else. And it's definitely like leaning into this whole Hinamoto thing, which I'm very, very much looking forward. Did I miss the last live? So sorry, asking questions. Answer over here. Let's see. Adventure stories. Yeah, so adventure stories aren't necessarily canon. If I point to a character here and they need to be canon, we only care about the point where they reached the Halidom. And like there's like one special case being Laranoa. So then let's see. Oh, let's see. Valentine's has Ezzelith and Orion. That is true, but I can't prove Valentine's. Valentine's only contains Hildegard. Um, Plus, like, a number of the Valentine stories are on their own, but I do think there's some crossovers between them. Xena does appear in Fractured Futures, but, like, Fractured Futures contains Xena. Xena doesn't contain Fractured Futures, if that makes any sense. And yeah, Xena dies in Fractured Futures. That specific instance of Xena dies. So the only Xena we see in Fractured Futures is a branching Xena, not the one that appears in the main campaign. I believe the one that dies is specifically the one from Audric's reality, and the one that we get in Chapter 14 is from a different reality, where Audric is the one who's gone missing or is no longer in the picture. Or he could still be. We don't know. All we know is that Aurelius gave her the Dawn Shard, and we don't know what happened to him afterward. He could still be fighting the Empire while she's off time traveling. And in fact, that would make sense, because that would be what happened in Audric's reality. He became Aurelius. Aurelius became Audric while she was off time traveling, but then she would have died. Versus in this one, she wouldn't have died. Although in the Chapter 13 interlude, we didn't see Audric or Aurelius. So it could be that that one branched away even further, and he's no longer in the picture. Let's see. I'm not going to worry about the White Sparrows and Patia, because those are specifically called out in the main campaign, so they're basically as canon as the main cast. So while I could add them to this chart, I'm not super worried about having to prove their canonicity. It's more things like Gala Leaf's story, like, is his story canon versus like other things. So Gala Leaf's story is likely canon. It won't change a whole lot if it is or isn't, although I do think that Gala Leaf's story and Kindness in Captivity have a lot in common, because Harl attacked the Halidom at both of them, and when he failed, he was like, "Oh well, I give up, goodbye." And I think I said this last time as a joke when Harl said like toodaloo, but I actually looked up the chapter, I think 11 interlude, the chapter 11 interlude, when he sees Elasan, he literally says toodaloo twice. Let's see, what do we got? Catherine, yeah, from the new event. This does have spoilers for everything that we've seen so far, including the new event. I've kind of danced around those a little bit because they're not super pertinent to this connection yet. I just pulled from the beginning of the event, like literally chapter 1 of the event. They say they're based on the Hinamoto tradition, and they name drop Yacht and Natalie. Yeah, Nobunaga's story was pretty cool. Wait, you don't remember? You don't remember Future Zethia dying in Fractured Futures? That was like the whole point of Kronos' mission, was to kill her. If you need a refresher on Fractured Futures, I have the whole event archived on my channel, and I'd recommend watching it at double speed, or just like skipping through it to find the part you're looking for. I literally just made it so that we can reference it anytime we need to. Let's see. Yeah, I'm also looking forward to the development of Hinamoto. The Horse Clan. Yeah, the Horse Clan is there. I just kind of tagged Nobunaga onto Mitsuhide, because that's kind of like in the Koffel Caper event. It was supposed to be the Mouse Clan coming with Mitsuhide, but Nobunaga just kind of tagged along. Fleur ties Valentine's Hunt for Harmony. Yeah. Because Fleur would have been introduced in what? I can't remember chapter 1 of Fleur's story. If she like how she came to the Halidom. Because like the question is, does chapter 1 of Fleur's story allow her to be at the Halidom without the Hunt for Harmony? Because if so, she can't confirm Hunt for Harmony. Oh gosh, I really want there to be anything with Audric and Xena. Like anything they give us with Audric and Xena is gonna confirm confirm or prove false, like the stuff we've been theorizing about, because they can literally explain their timelines to one another, And there's a small chance that they're still from the same timeline, but I really doubt it. Considering like Audric's last stand was at the Halidom and Xena in the interlude was at the Halidom. Like, but they weren't like with one another. So, it'd be interesting to have the castle story now, because if Audric shows up after chapter 14, the reality has now branched away from Yuden getting possessed and bringing about the end of the world. No one from the alternate realities knows what's going to happen anymore, because we've entered an entirely different set of events. Yeah, they just name drop Jotun. But, like, Jotun's existence proves Natalie because their stories are entwined. Like, Jotun and Natalie have a really cool adventure story thing going on where they both share, like, the same set of events, and they're both planning the same festival, and you're just seeing, like, the two sides of them as they work with other characters. Like, literally, part one of their story, they're meeting up with different parts of, like, the first chapter of the story, they're meeting up with different members of the main cast, and they end up bumping into each other at the end of the chapter 1. It's pretty cool. Let's see. All the ninjas from Hinamoto. What? Wait. Okay, I need to look more into the singer guy from the new events. Let's see. Hunt for Harmony is reference to chapter 2. Yeah. We'll see. That's fine though, because Hunt for Harmony requires chapter 2 to have happened, but chapter 2 doesn't require Hunt for Harmony to have happened. So that's kind of like how these arrows work. It's like, so Galaranza's story needs Malka to exist, but Malka doesn't need Galaranza to exist. So unfortunately that can't prove Hunt for Harmony. I think you're from the same timeline, Xena. So, like, I do think Xena and Audric are from closely related timelines. I think they're from, like, they can be from, like, the same timeline, but alternate realities that are almost parallel, kind of. But, like, because we don't see the Xena from Audric's reality, and we don't see the Audric from Xena's reality, I think that they are probably branched. We need a little more information first. Malka, Francesca, Carl, Sazanka, and Luther all show up during the first chapter of Rhythmic Resolutions 2. They do? I have to double check that. Let's see. Yeah, we really need a castle story with Xena and Audric. Like, the thing is, like, they've kind of danced around Audric's existence for a while, just because he could, like, alter the timeline. Like, if he comes in before chapter 14, he is 100% changing things, just like Xena tried to do. But Xena couldn't after chapter 5 because, as we know, she said that the other's presence in the world was keeping her away. Audric traveled probably with a gate, like it was a permanent jump, so he probably couldn't be kept out of the world like that. Or maybe he could be. But anyways, Audric showing up after chapter 14 has very little left to change, and more just to look at the past. So he could just confirm some of the lore, which would be really nice. Yeah, it's Marvelous Naoto, I think is the name. Yeah, Fleur needs the Hunt for Harmony to beat the Helm because the elders wouldn't allow her to go outside the village because of tradition. Ooh, that's a good idea. But I mean, like, they would have had similar tradition. Would they have it similar? Because I know Cerise and Luca are from a different tribe. Intriguing thought. Wonder if the Syndicate and the Agato will end up being connected. It's possible. Reading back through the Agato stories, it seems the thing they have in common is the Agato veil. So when they do that really cool, like, background effect, like near the end of their stories, that's when they're recognized as Agito. And I think that's something they'll have in common is like that ability. I wonder if Emperor Yuden from the bad timelines will show up. I thought about that too, because in chapter 13, the interlude, when Xena is like trying to get back into the other world, and then like the dragon attacks the castle and she runs away, like we see that future Yuden, who's possessed, shows up like they're in person, and she questions if he did too because it shattered the barrier, which was really strong. So I'm wondering if he is following her. So theoretically too, if she's just projecting herself, like the same amount of time would pass in her base reality as it does as she's projected into our reality. So it's kind of it doesn't have to happen that way. That's just how this would theoretically work. But like they can kind of bend that rule just a little bit and still have it working with the multiverse. Let's see. We don't have info on Notha just yet, aside from hailing from Hinamoto and serving Seimei. Maybe. Let's see. They don't have any lines, but there's... Could Audric and Xena be from slightly different realities, like a pre and post Flashpoint? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is, like, their reality was the same up until a point, where, like, in Xena's reality, like, maybe Aurelius or Audric died, and in Audric's reality, Xena went off on her time travel mission but never came back. Because Cronus would have killed her. Yeah, the Feral Shroud. Something that all Agitos have in common. Let's see. Cerise and Luca from a different village. Let's see. Just remember the mystery man that Volk and the twins met. Volk with his tier 2 weapons. I really need to read the stuff on Volk's weapons, because, like, I read all the stuff on the twins and on Ciella's weapons, so I know about those, but I really need to read the other weapons. I just need to go through, like, all the worm prints and read all that too. We don't know how the Octo are able to shapeshift. The Kaiyan might be able to shapeshift because of Keelan Relic. But yeah, like, also, like, the prince is able to shapeshift. So I wonder if it's something related to that. Like, it's a different kind of shapeshifting. What if the Ogito ability is created by the Syndicate? Just like what's his face dragon thing was. That'd be Aldred, I think. It's possible. Like, if the Ogito had a connection to the Syndicate, that would be really cool, because it would be tying together a lot more loose ends. So yeah. It'd be really cool if there was a connection there. Xena story seems to imply different timelines are more quantum than casual. Like, regardless of outside influence, there will be differences between each. Well, so that's the thing. So there, I talk about this a lot. There are 3 kinds of realities. We're not going to talk about alternate because those aren't used in time travel. Alternate's like the world of Fire Emblem versus the world of Grastea. They're completely different. They have nothing in common. Parallel realities are all identical but offset in time. Versus branching realities. A branching reality compared to a base reality will have some amount of time where it is identical to the other reality, but at some point becomes different or becomes the same. It doesn't matter which way it goes. And it can branch into and away from a reality multiple times. Let's see. Agito use masks like members of the Syndicate. Intriguing. Let's see. Because the hunt for harmony, Silas's wish for the shelves to be completely reserved, not make contact with humans, seems to affect them completely. Let's see. Luca and the Prince first meets Fleur in episode 2 of the Hunt for Harmony. Yeah, so the question is, let me actually just bring it up. So I'm going to spoil Fleur's story wholly right here for a second, because I'm going to go look it up. So let's see. Adventurers. Light. Dagger. Nope. Dagger. Dagger. Fleur. Nope. Stories. So. Yeah. So, because he calls her by her name, he already knows her. This means that the Hunt for Harmony has to precede Fleur's story. So while yes, Fleur requires the Hunt for Harmony, and the Valentine's event requires Fleur, at the same time, we still, like, nothing that already ties to the center requires the Hunt for Harmony. Like, the Hunt for Harmony requires Laranoa, it requires Fleur. But these arrows are pointing inward, not outward, which means we can't make it canon. But because Fleur seems to have some connections, I will put her on this list. No, come on. Fleur. And what the heck, I'll put Silas on this list too. But yeah, so these guys aren't necessarily canon. Nothing is pointing to them. But they are inherent to the event. So yeah. There we go. Yeah. So I'd say if we assume that any of the stories in Valentine's Confections are canon, that all of them are. So I'm not going to worry too much about any of that. Like which ones are canon, which ones aren't. Excuse me. Ooh. Volk tier 2 Blade strongly implies that Mystery Man is Truden, like the actual 7th heir. What is the name of the 5th Scion? That would be Baron. Oh, I was actually reading back through Chapter 6 earlier today. I'm not done yet, but I was reading back through it, and it's actually really interesting, the stuff we just forgot because it was so long ago. For instance, like, he's taught, like, they're like, oh, some burly guy's like a tie in the castle, and like, Yoon's like, oh, that's my brother Valix. Yeah, he's like the 3rd? 4th. He's the 4th heir. And then Cleo's like, well, how many heirs are there? It's like, well, you see, I'm the 7th, and then Emil's my older, he's the 6th, and then there's above us, there's Valak, he's the 4th. And they're like, what happened to the 5th? And Yoon's like, well, no one knows what happened to the 5th, not even the royal family. So it's like a nifty bit, like, the story is like a continuous story with foreshadowing for all sorts of things, and we just don't see it because we wait so long between chapters. Like, we just forget the little details like that. And also when he meets Valix the first time, Valix is like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, we're just kind of protecting people. And Valix is like, what is your intent? Like, you need to figure out what you're doing. So, like, that's when he kind of decides, like, I'm going to go save my sister. Like, we're going to face the Empire and we're going to save my sister. Like, he makes that decision there. Stage Octo weapons of different descriptions? Apparently. Let's see. A completely different timeline, seeing as a Aurelius story. Aurelius Assaults. Like, Aurelius' soul being in Zodiark is unique to the main campaign and any timeline in which Aurelius died in the presence of Zodiark. So Audric and Parallel Zodiark would have separate souls, and that would have no relation to Aurelius and Zodiark from the main timeline. Like, just because Zodiark absorbed Aurelius' soul in one reality does not mean it happens in all realities. It's a specific event to that reality. I honestly don't think the old branching reality theory even works anymore. Again, Xena's story strongly implies that there was no outside interference. There's always differences. Don't forget that Fleur has ties to Valentine's as well. Xena states that Aurelius survived in her timeline. Wait, she states that... Oh, well, yeah. Xena states that Aurelius survived in her timeline, which means he never came together with Zodiac. Yeah. So in Xena's timeline, Zodiark and would have never absorbed Aurelius. So I mentioned this in my last video about the timeline theorizing, is that if the group never went to the Binding Ruins, then Aurelius doesn't die protecting Yuden. So either he's captured there and escapes later, or what I think is more likely is Zodiark covers his escape and he gets away, and then he becomes a wild card. Meanwhile, Zodiark doesn't die, but is captured and is later used in the creation of Kronos. So yeah, they would be a separate entity. Isn't Time War and Torment Yeah, so Time War, Torment, and Echoes of Antiquity do they basically introduce the Keelan, I think. So I put Keelan on here right here next to Kaiyan because Kaiyan is a Keelan as far as we can tell. But I can't prove Time Worn Torment or Echoes of Antiquity. There's nothing in either. There's nothing in either that is a requirement for something else that we know is canon to exist. Doesn't Sha Wujing also need Laxi? Probably. I haven't actually read his story yet. I do have him. I just haven't heard his story. Eileen also appears in Silas's story. Yeah, I believe she's tending the garden when they show him into the castle. And yeah, I believe Silas also does require Hunt for Harmony because they know who he is in chapter 1 of his story. It does open with Luke and Cerise, though, and they recognize him. I don't know if the prince noticed them or not. Less important now that we already have Fleur on the map. Strong feeling that Baron is connected to the Syndicate. Ooh. That could be possible. There's not much evidence for it, but there's not much evidence against it, so... Let's see. Or when the reality branch doesn't really changes, the original timeline of that universe ceases to exist. The thing with the whole multiverse time travel, the whole multiverse theory is that things don't cease. So let me save this. Can I open like a new paint without closing this one? No? Well, at least I saved it. Anyway, so basically when you have a timeline, say you have this is a timeline. It's I'm going to zoom on this a bit. So you have this timeline. So you have this timeline going here, and then it branches. So it becomes this. So like this would be the thing. So these are two timelines, and they have this point in common. Well, that's not actually what happens. What actually happens is this. They were, they were separate all along, and then just at this point, it changes. Yeah, so basically, these, they're the same here, and they're different here, but they were always separate timelines. So that's what a branching reality means. Are you sure that Fractured Futures isn't just a closed time loop that is self-correcting? Fractured Futures contains a closed time loop, but it also contains branches outside of that time loop. So not only do you have perfectly looped parallel realities, you have branching realities that are half parallel to those closed time loops that branch away. It's kind of confusing, I get. Let me pull up my my thing again. So basically, come on, let me zoom in. So basically, right here with this red line, this is a closed time loop. It keeps going in a circle, and there are infinite parallel realities that are following this. You also have realities that have only this segment parallel to the rest, and then it branches away. And you have infinite of all of those. Let's see. Eve with Audric helps jump in. But Baron was in prison for his whole life. How could he form the syndicate? Well, that would imply that Baron is the leader of the syndicate, as opposed to being someone who was affected by the syndicate. So, like, the syndicate could have captured him and done experimentation on him or something. Let's see. Cassandra has been with Audric before Yuden was born, so possibly canon. Well, so you can have the main campaign without Cassandra. We did up until Cassandra was added to the game. So Cassandra does rely heavily on the main campaign, primarily a bunch that happened before the prologue. But I can't prove her canon just yet. Well, no, that's right. That's a good point, because Cassandra, come on. Fractured Futures would prove Cassandra and Delphi. Because we move directly into the main timeline and see both of them. Plus Cassandra, they're visiting the Cassandra in Yuden's timeline. And then later on in Audric's story, he visits the Cassandra in his own timeline and she dies. No. Yeah. Come on. Make it look nice. Close enough. So, there we go. What? No. Gonna make me save over it? Fine. Okay. So, now we have that. What? Wasn't he sealed away just recently, unsealed by fairies? Isn't that why he's so attached? Yeah. So, Baron was released by fairies in what the... It was an interlude, right? For chapter 12 or 11? Yeah, so he was released by fairies recently. We don't know when he was sealed away. There's still a lot of unknowns about Baron, and I don't have much evidence on hand as to his past. It's heavily not explained yet, but I definitely feel like Baron's identity will be revealed in the coming chapters. Yep. Samurg is from there, and Garuda is from... Yeah. See, Baron is part of the syndicate. Didn't Cassandra also know Mim? I don't think so. No, Cassandra's not that old. Like, Cassandra is, like, I think she's just a little bit older, because she's not Sylvan. Like, Cassandra's not Sylvan, she's human. And I know, like, you're thinking, like, but she has the Sylvan ears, and she's just covering them. But the real clinching thing is she has human ears. So, she's not Sylvan. She's not that old. She's just old for human standards. Plus, like, if she was like young when Aurelius was young, she wouldn't be old when Aurelius is old. She would still be kind of young. So she's definitely human. So no, she didn't know the actual Mim because humans don't live that long. That would have been 300 years ago. Barry knew almost nothing about Yuden until chapter 13. So Yuden, when Yuden talks about the fifth heir in chapter 6, he said that was before my time. So Baron definitely was Baron was very likely sealed away before Yuden was born. Let's see. There's no way to prove any of the collabs are canon. That's unfortunately true. The closest I can get to the Monster Hunter is that we know Eileen is canon. And Carl and Berserker were in a castle story with Eileen, and someone mentioned earlier that Carl was name dropped at the beginning of the new event. So if that event's canon, then we can get Berserker. I don't know where we could get Vanessa, but that would be the closest I could get to the Monster Hunter event. As far as Fire Emblem, there's really nothing tying to it. It's kind of its own thing. Cassandra's in her 60s, but she can de-age. Yeah, Cassandra de-aged herself. She didn't lower her age, but she changed her appearance to appear younger through whatever magical means. But yeah, no, Cassandra's human. Does shape-shifting and dragon increase longevity given chapter 10? Well, see, I'd have to reread it. I did scroll through it the other day. If you're talking about Alberius, he didn't shapeshift, he fused with a dragon. And dragons do live for a very long time. Dragalia life, I don't think Dragalia life counts as canon. It doesn't really have ties to any other thing in particular. It's more just like little character stories. Like the recent one with the chapter 14 character, like, doesn't really have any lore or story to it. It's just a nice little character thing. Yeah, the thing with Chthonius, it's like, after chapter 10 and he got released in the gacha, it's like, oh yeah, but he didn't really die in chapter 10, and like the remaining will of Alberius told him, yeah, just go make a pact with the prince, it'd be great. And he's like, okay, I'll do that. And then he just goes, like, I can't prove Chthonius is canonically at the Halidom and alive. All we know is what happened after chapter 10. So gacha Chthonius I can't prove is canon. Where the Worm Clan leaders fit? Like, they're in with the New Year's events. They are up here. The Worm Clans. Yeah. It was a really interesting reveal on Chthonius because we got hinted for a while that there were 6 Great Worms, but one of them disappeared. And so it was nice to find out what happened to him. And that, like, he made, like, that sacrifice. So, the other thing is, like, yeah, he did wind up in the gacha, and his dragon story was kind of eh. But at the same time, like, it's cool that he's a 5-star and, like, has a decent dragon ability, as opposed to the other just welfare ones. But, like, because the other problem is there are 6 Great Worms and 5 elements. So... All right, so another thing that I read the other day. Let me see if I still have this up. I don't. All right, but another thing I read the other day on the wiki. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Gosh, where would I begin to find this? All right. Be in chapter 11. This one? No, it's this one. Yeah. So this part here, this is an excerpt from the part about with Finlorda and Aurelius. It's I, Finlorda, do hereby agree to grant the wish of the human Aurelius. So this tells us two things about Finlorda. A, she's probably not human. And the second part is grant the wish of. So that could mean like adhere to the request of, or it could mean like actually magically grant a wish. So let's see. There's a castle story that features Jotun and Natalie from the Eastern Emissaries. I can't prove all castle stars are canon. Neither can I prove all Worm Prints are canon as well. Oh yeah, Chthonius should have been a Gala dragon. That would have been really good. What's the Keelan relation? Kion is probably a Keelan. That's as far as we can get with Keelan being canon, because I can't prove either of the two events with Zhuangzhang. Let's see. But yeah, with this, yeah, Finlorda could be a dragon. I've seen it theorized that Finlorda is a fairy. And like Finlorda is also, I believe, theorized to be from north. And it says, on said terms, the agreement between our nations is sworn. So Finlorda is probably the leader of a nation. Probably one of the northern ones. I can't remember where I found that. Let's see down here. Okay, so that's that part. This is, yeah, no, right. Literally here. Harl says Toodaloo. And he says it again. It's really funny. Anyway, yeah, back to this. And so in this. Is it this one? Yeah. So this is when Ellie's like thinking about it before they storm the area. And here we got like the actual truth. So the children have been born, and like we got the seventh heir and the eighth, Yun and Zethia. And 10 days following the birth of the seventh child, he was stricken with worm scale, tempting his child to health, bore no fruit, and he entered Ilia's arms a month after his birth. King Aurelius then welcomed a new adopted son into his life. This child henceforth became the seventh in line to the throne, Prince Yudin. And then down here it says, on said terms between the agreement our nation so sworn, Aurelius and Finlorda. And then Ellie goes on to speculate the name Finlorda is unknown to me at best. It's a lesser-known noble who governs a far-flung territory somewhere. So yeah. But like this is what's causing doubt in Elisan of whether Yudin's legitimate heir to the throne. However, really interestingly, is I've been reading back through chapter 6, and Valix is also trying to determine if Yudin is a worthy of ruling. So Valix says there's like three traits that a ruler needs. The first one is the divine right to rule, the blood of the dragons, and Yudin proves that by shapeshifting before him. The second thing he says is like strength and valor, and so Yudin fights him. And the third thing is the support of the people, which happens at the end of chapter 6. So like it's really interesting that like Valix acknowledged his right to rule, and then Elisan is suddenly having doubts later. So who is Elysium? Elysium is the holy worm. So I would say kind of like Ilia is the god of like the humanoids. Elysium would kind of be like the god of dragons. I'm not sure. Yeah, Finlorda could be a dragon. But yeah, Finlorda is the leader of a nation. So I wouldn't think there'd be a nation of dragons. Although we do know from dragons like Gilgamesh that like dragons can be rulers. So isn't the church's two factions canon because of chapter 8? Ha! But I was also reading chapter 6. The Perditionists are mentioned as early as chapter 6. And chapter 6 also names Alex as an NPC and refers back to chapter 2. And chapter 6 was available at launch. So the Perditionists have actually always been in the game since that early. And Alex has been a named character since the game's launch. We just got her in chapter 8. Yeah, the Elysium statues that we're summoning takes place. Summoning isn't canon, though, because that's not at all how characters arrive in the world. So I think the summoning animation is just like sparkly, flashy for summoning. It's not canon. Is everything in the lore trailers canon? I don't think so. Anything in the trailers for the story is like in the story. So All right, so I'm actually approaching 2 hours here, so I'm probably gonna try and end it around there. Um, so let's wrap up with whatever else we can come up with. And like I'll probably post this image, like I'll crop it down and post it on my Discord afterwards so that you guys can look at it anytime. I mean, the Great Worms refer to like the 5 story dragons and Chthonius. Like the holy, like, because you have like Mars is like the blaze worm. It's like it's kind of like their title. So a Great Worm is just like them. So like Elysium's the holy worm. Well, we get the Summoner. Summoner's just a random NPC, kind of like Nina. Let's see. I wonder if we'll get Nina though. Like we got Ramona, so getting Ramona was actually a really interesting thing. So I wonder if we'll get Nina at some point. Nina doesn't seem like a fighter, though. Why is Alex such a side character? See, one of the problems this game faces is when you have so many characters. So we now have 8 characters that like the 8 main characters that we can play as. Plus we have like other characters like Leaf is on the side and Cerise is on the side. Plus like all the other characters that Halidom. Like we have so many characters that you can't tell a cohesive story with you can't like have a cohesive conversation with 8 people talking at once. It's really hard. Like if you get in like a Discord server and you have more than 4 people talking, like you can have a bunch of people like muted listening in, but if you have more than 4 people talking, it gets really, really chaotic. And like Dragalia can kind of get around this by having like characters talk like one at a time because that's how it's presented. However, if one character continues another character's train of thought, that's very inconsistent. So every depiction we've ever read of Ilya matches the Summoning Girl. I mean, the Summoning Girl could be Ilya, and the statue behind is Elysium, and like that'll be the symbolism of it. But I don't think it's canon. Pipple doesn't seem like a fighter either. Well, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like if we got Nina, her character story would probably be her like teaming up with Francesca and being a merchant versus the gameplay with her being fighting. I don't know. She'd almost certainly be a support unit. Mitsuba practically fights her enemies as if she was cooking, and so does Valerio. So Nina would be like dropping shipments on their head. It's like, oh, someone just ordered 12 anvils. Let me drop those right here. I think Chell is Yuden's cousin. Her affinity for Yuden plus Dragonblood strongly affirms it Aurelius being his grandfather? Huh. No. I mean, I don't know. Summoning Girl could also be a direct descendant of Ilya. I mean, a lot of individuals could be direct descendants of Ilya. Like, the royal line could be direct descendants of Ilya. We don't know. Like, I would really like it if for the 2nd anniversary, like, I talked about this last time, if we got an event where Yuden went back in time to fight the other in the Second War of Binding, and this would create a branching timeline, and they would very much establish that this is not directly their past, but it would give us a look into what happened in the Second War of Binding. Or, like, even the First War of Binding would be really, like, out there. Just to give us some more lore and, like, some more things. Because another thing, I reread Chapter 10 recently. Alberius was so powerful because he had a holy sword. And I don't know where he got that sword. Apparently it was a gift from Ilya, but how did he get it? And, like, he used the sword when he stabbed himself to seal the other in his blood. Which was, like, the blood right or whatever he called it. But, like, he then broke the sword, and it became the sacred shards, which were placed around the kingdom near the other's body parts, its physical body parts, that summoned fiends, to keep them from summoning fiends, because the holy aura deterred that ability, which is interesting, because that ties in with Mei Han, I think was his name, in Time Worn Torment, a fiend that summons other fiends via his existence, which would suggest that Mei Han is a demon. Wasn't Ilya just a normal human? I think Ilya was kind of like the Gerstein equivalent of Jesus, because if Ilya was a normal human, there's no way that they would, like worship her as a goddess. So, how would you have dragon blood if he wasn't the royal family? Well, yeah, that's the thing. He has dragon blood. So, he's not necessarily. It's not necessarily like part of the Alberian royal family. He could be part of a different dragon shapeshifting royal family, and I know that's kind of out there. But in Chapter 2, Midgardsormr talks about the Primal Pact Shard, which was the original pact between, I believe, Ilia and Elysium, which created dragon blood. And from there stemmed out several lines of dragon blood, including the Alberian royal family. So it's not out of the question that there's another royal family out there, or a non-royal family perhaps, that has dragon blood. Particularly, potentially, Finlorda. He's considered a demi-fiend by the game. I mean, it's a question of mechanics versus lore. Like, I'm not sure maybe Wuhan would be like a full-on demon, but it is established in Time-Worn Torment that they have the power to destroy an entire mountain in a single blast, which begs the question, how the heck did they combat that guy in the story? Like, yeah, that's right. Isn't Urius like a cousin or something? He's like kind of a, not like direct descendant, but like a relative. Let's see. Rock and Urius' story confirm branches of the royal family that still carry dragon blood, albeit diluted. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like they still have the dragon blood. It's just not as like, it's not the royal line. Let's see. That Ilio is a normal human that ascended to godhood. I mean, it's possible, but then the world lacks a creation story. Because, like, no, because here's the other thing. The whole Scrolls of Perdition thing suggests that the other is the child of Ilia. And if Ilia was a human in the first War of Binding fighting the other, that doesn't make sense. Like, because Ilia would had to have been A, divine, and B, existed before the first War of Binding is not a human in order to create the other. And like, again, I saw this again recently when I was rereading through Chapter 6, because there's like a whole chapter devoted to Elisand's past, and like I think it's the first chapter and the third portion of Chapter 6, and like Elisand's talking about her past and like how she, because here's the other thing. The other thing that really got me thinking about her decision is Ranzel asked Elisand like, why is she fighting for Yudin? He thought like paladins protected the Auspex, and yeah, that's the thing that ties into her decision in Chapter 14. Is her role as a paladin is to protect the church and the Auspex, and she just continued fighting with the prince because his ideals kind of made sense. And also she's fighting to, get back the Auspex. So, and like the whole reason she walked away from the church and Alex tried to kill her was because she refused to accept the Scrolls of Perdition. Which, I mentioned this in my last live stream, that I had an issue with the existence of the Perditionists. And it's not about what they believe, it's about that they believe what they believe matters. And some elaboration on that, it's like, so what if like the other is the child of Ilia? So what? Does that change anything? Like, he still tried to destroy the world like 2 times, and now this is the 3rd time. And one of the arguments that was made back to me was that a lot of people, like commoners, like even knights, like all sorts of people over the world, didn't know that Zethia was possessed by the other. That is a piece of information only known by like the main crew and like the royal family. Like, you have some random NPC out in town, he's like, oh look, Aurelius is dead and Zethia is taking the throne. Okay, that makes sense, because I reread the beginning of chapter, it was the beginning of Chapter 6. It literally opens up with Zethia possessed by the other, like standing before her people and be like, Aurelius has died, and she addresses him as, she calls him Emperor Aurelius. It's like, Aurelius has died and I am the Empress now. And then like all of her knights are like, yay, we're gonna conquer the world. So but yeah, so like nobody might know that that's the other. They just see it as Zethia, who's like just really gotten mean for some reason. But like on that note, most of the country wouldn't know Zethia personally and wouldn't know that she was a nice person beforehand. So it boils down to like the main crew knowing the other. And then like the other thing is no one was alive 300 or 1,000 years ago. Well, I guess Sylvans might have been. Maybe Keelan. Good gracious, there are a lot of races that could have been alive back then. Anyway, but the humans. This is a human colony that is in question. Wouldn't have a personal relationship to the Wars of Binding. So like the fact that like the humans of the church, for instance, would have no like they would like know the history and be like, oh yeah, the other showed up and tried to kill the, well, I don't know. It's really hard to this is where my problem comes in, is like it's really, really hard to justify that the other should be like respected or something when he showed up twice and tried to kill all the dragons. Like, yeah, he was summoned by humans in the first War of Binding to fight the dragons, and that was his goal, and that is still his goal to the day. But like, all the Alien Church also reveres dragons. It's revealed in Tobias's story that like dragons are to be revered at all costs, and attacking one is a grave offense against the church, and that is the crux of Tobias's story. Like, so the fact that the other's trying to kill all the dragons, like, and Tobias being a perditionist, it just doesn't make sense. Like, I'm gonna go through the comments now because I'm sure someone's been offering more information to try and help me understand this. I mean, Ilya cannot be the other's mother because of the fact that he was summoned from another dimension or universe by humans. Well, if Ilya is a goddess above the plane of humanity, the other could have been created outside that plane and be summoned into the plane. The other wouldn't have been created by the humans summoning him. He would have been summoned. Kind of like adventurers don't begin existing once you summon them into your roster. They exist outside of it, and then they just join your group. Let's see. I mean, let's see. I mean, Otherworld is the space between worlds. It's not really a world of its own. It's kind of like a pocket dimension. But, I mean, it could be. It could also be the, there could also be a world where it's full of fiends, and that's where the other comes from, because the other's body invites fiends into the world, and they're coming from somewhere. Like, so, probably the world that the other is from. The Sylvan and Keelan had been alive for so long, it probably didn't have anything to do with the war, since they always stay away from other races. That is also true. The other seems to eclipse all other individuals, as Elysium worked her way to seal the other. There's little evidence besides the religion around herself that she's a goddess. It should also be noted that we're talking about religion here. That's pretty blasphemous and would anger some people if that doesn't change the thing. So the Alien Church in the game is heavily based off of Christianity. So my first thought was that the other would be an equivalent to, say, like the devil. But it's not like a 1-to-1 ratio, because in Christianity, the devil was an archangel who became jealous of humanity for God's love for them and fell from grace. He turned his back on God and became the devil, and a third of the angels fell with him. And so basically became the evil entity that he's known as today. So with the other, it would be like Ilya created the other as like something good, and the other became evil, which could be the case, but we don't have evidence for it yet. So yeah. So in Christianity, demons are fallen angels, so it would stand to reason that the other would be like a servant of Ilya who fell. So on that note, that would be like that fact, that idea would be the thing keeping the Perditionists and the rest of the Alien Church apart. And the fact that I just, well, I guess I have like Christianity as a basis to go off of, but like, how come no one has thought of this? Like in Grestea, it's like, because the Perditionists keep like saying like, oh, like the other is like, the other can't be like a bad thing because he came from Ilya. Well, my direct counterpoint to that is, well, Ilia also created all of humanity, and there's some bad apples in there. So, anyway. Draganule's Ilia's birthday. So they that also kind of has parallels to Christianity in that Christmas is like the celebration of Christ's birth, but the gift-giving part comes from a different thing with Saint Nicholas, he like snuck into people's houses and left presents or whatever. I don't know. Don't take that as a quote from me, but like basically Saint Nicholas delivered gifts to people, and so both of those kind of merge together to become what we know as Christmas today. So Dragonule probably has nothing to do with the birth of Ilia and is probably just following the tradition set by Saint Starfall, who is the Agrestine equivalent of Saint Nicholas. Let's see. Yeah, I can't prove the collabs are canon, unfortunately. All right, so I'm gonna try and wrap this up shortly. But let me pull up this and go through the events real quick and talk about which ones I like can and cannot prove. So Loyalty's Requiem made the cut. Obviously Celiero is on it. Trick or Treasure. It doesn't add anything to the lore, so I'm not super worried about it. It's just kind of a little event. Kindness and Captivity. Of course, we got Sylvia in there from Audric's story. Wish to the Winds, similar thing. Nothing new to the lore, just characters. Resplendent Refrain. Does add the demon into the world of the raid boss, Sobnok. So, I can't remember if they said he was an actual demon or not. But, like, I don't know if it adds a little or not. I'd have to re-look back at the story. Miracle of Dragonule, same thing. It adds Saint Starfall to the lore, but he's not really tied to anything. I covered Fortune from Afar. Dream Big Under the Big Top, again, it's just a character story. Not really anything new in the lore. Aside that dragons can be really personable, I guess, like Liger. Like, some dragons are like Garuda, who's a guardian deity of a town, and some dragons are like Meridimus or Liger, and they like are very close with humans, and don't assume such like a revered role, even if they are very well respected. Or Liger, who is literally just like a circus animal. I don't know what to say about that. Skyborn Spectacle introduces us to Peng Lai, the town, and also calls attention to Tai Wu. Unfortunately, I don't think I can call Peng Lai canon. I couldn't think of anything that tied it into the campaign. I'd have to reread the story, but I don't think anything relies on Skyborn Spectacle to make it canon. Valentine's Confections I talked about. Can't make it canon, but it does have a lot of characters in it. Waltz with Fate has Phantom in it, which connects to Fractured Futures and Audric's story. Accursed Archives. I really wanted Accursed Archives and Stirring Shadows to tie into this because they have some really deep lore on their own, but I don't think that they're inherently tied to the main campaign yet. Because this also brings up like another facet of religion. Like there's the Ilian Church, but there's also like the Lovecraftian side of things with the Ancient One. Like, we don't know who the Ancient One is. We don't know the mythos of the Ancient One. Is it part of the world's creation story? Is it a god like Ilia? Is it like a demigod? Is it like, what is the Ancient One? And we know it has its army of Nyarlathotep serving it. And we know that there are like keys and gates, as like Akasha refers to it. And like Akasha and Heinwald are both like individuals like with this going on. Curran's just there trying to figure it out, which is pretty cool because he's an Inquisitor of the Ilian Church. And it's really fun when Curran shows up because he's just trying to get to the bottom of everything. Like he shows up in Tobias' story, for instance, and I thought that was really cool. But the whole thing with the Ancient One in that story and the Nyarlathoteps, like, because Nyarlathotep also mentioned something along the lines of, yeah, I'm doing what the Ancient One tells me, but I'm also planning a rebellion. Like, it said so in, like, the really weird words, but it said something along the lines of, like, we do what we're told, but we plan scurrious rebellion. So, Nyarlathotep is trying to break free of the Ancient One, it would seem. Hunt for Harmony, we covered that. Can't make it canon, but there are a lot of things that point to it. The collab events, I can't point anything to them, but they do have a very close relationship to the main campaign. Echoes of Antiquity and Time-Worn Torment, again, focused on the Keelan. Nothing points to them. A Wish to the Winds rerun. The summer events are very easy to have things to point to things because they're so closely tied to characters that we do know are canon or are likely canon, but I can't say they're canon for sure. Fractured Futures, been through that. Stirring Shadows, Kind of Captivity. The Mega Man event didn't really even have a story to begin with. Let's see. A Sweeping Retrospective, just kind of a little bit of Let's Clean the Halidom. Clawful Caper, I covered that one. Collab event. Dash of Disaster is, again, just kind of a character thing over anything else. So there's not really any lore there. Yeah, Scars of the Syndicate does have lore tied into it, but I can't find anything that ties into it. Vagabond Popper doesn't have a story. It's just a character again, albeit a cute one. And then Ascent to Eminence just doesn't have a story again. Time War Torment. United Front has Gal Uden's form in it, but I can't say that this exists. Actually, let me just add that real quick into here. So yeah, that goes right here. And it requires Gal Uden. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. On save, there we go. And back to this. So yeah, and then we're just up to Rhythmic Resolutions, which I tied into the event. So yeah, that basically brings this to a close. Yeah, so I guess I'll finish out by reading through the chat a little bit, and then if you guys want to continue chatting with me, I have my Discord linked in the description if you guys want to join. I'm also on several of the other Dragalia Lost servers. But let's see what we got. They didn't really develop Mustard Addy because they didn't have time to develop Alien Elysium. Let's see, Lunar New Year's. I don't know. Let's see. I doubt they're done with Morsayati. Yeah, Morsayati got eaten by Baron. So while his story might not continue, and I think it might, I think once they defeat Baron, Morsayati might come out again. But I think they're definitely going to develop his past, if not his future. Here's my theory. Uden is Albirus in a time loop. I did see the theory that Uden was Albirus from an alternate timeline, which is possible, I guess. But that would doom the other timeline. Accursed Archives is underrated. I agree. Accursed Archives and Stirring Shadows are a really interesting lore piece. Let's see. Super hype for the development of the Ancient One, Akasha, Heinwald, Lotha, and Nyarlathotep. Yeah. I feel like we'll get another story event in the line of Stirring Shadows. Summer events are based on Verica, but not necessarily canon. Yeah. The summer events include characters that we know are canon, but the story events are not canon because they include those characters. Basically, we have two big overarching stories. The main stories, the 12 Zodiacs of Hinamoto. Yeah. So it's really interesting with the latest event that they are calling attention to Hinamoto. So I'm interested to see where that goes. I really hope the game has a long enough lifespan where it can develop on these different stories. And it's another nice thing where if they have all these story arcs going, then we don't necessarily have to wait 2 months to get more story, because each event can continue a previous story that we're waiting for. The current event can give us clues towards the Worm Clan story, which instead of waiting a full year between, we could get clues now and continue this story while we're waiting on the main campaign. Don't some stories call Uden Albirus Reborn? Uden is Albirus' descendant. He's kind of his legacy. So Albirus Reborn could just be a title rather than a literal thing. All of the different dragon types: humanoid, animalistic, which is Arctos, and reptilian, which is Brunhilde. I mean, okay. Nefari has a connection to Nadine. Huh. I haven't read Nadine's story, so I wouldn't know. But that's interesting. Let's see. As a closing question, do you think Cygames intends for us to consume events as canon or not? I don't know. I would love to ask Cygames directly, are the events canon? And I am almost sure they would say, well, they might be. It's a tough question because if the events are canon, all of them, then it does call into like especially the collab ones would call into question Yuden's decision in chapter 14, which I've been over that before. So like I could see it as like none of the events are canon except for Flames of Reflection. We know that one has to be. Or all of the events except the collab events are canon. I could see it that way too. Because we know from Lazarus' story that it's fully possible that a year time skip could have occurred. Or I could see that all of the events are canon, and even the collab ones. And those would tie into the dimensional rifts that we know happen with the other events, using otherworldly fragments in the other world. It's really interesting that Morsaida mentions Elysium and not Ilia when he was trying to possess Yuden. Well, yeah, because like the Auspex is Ilia's chosen one, and Yuden is like, did I get that right? Yeah, yeah. So Zethi is Ilian's chosen one, and Yuden is Elysium's chosen one. So it's kind of like the two sides of that. I mean, yeah, Golemim's story is entirely not real. It was stated to be, but it's not less fun because of it. And I suppose that does call into question if something isn't canon, would they tell us? Like Mim's fabrication. Another thing is, I think if, like, even if events are in their separate canon, events should be canon to one another. Like, we know some of them are directly, like Fortune from Afar and Clawful Caper, and then the Echoes of Antiquity and Time-Worn Torment. So, and then Splash of Adventure, Crescendo of Courage are direct sequels. I mean, like, again, it doesn't matter too terribly much if they're canon or not, because it's still just fun times. The question is, it being canon affects how we view Yuden's decision in Chapter 14. So that's the question. Morsaid has also shown it has more to do with a bone to pick with dragons. He doesn't really care about humans. Yeah, like, Morsaadi's thing is he was summoned to kill the dragons. Like, in the first War of Binding, the humans and dragons were fighting, and so the humans summoned Morsaidi to get the edge on the dragons. So that's literally what he's here to do. He's here to kill the dragons, or to subjugate them as he does with the Void Dragons. I mean, yeah, Fire Emblem Heroes has no references to Dragalia Lost because, if the collab events are canon, they're only canon to Dragalia Lost, because they only appeared in Dragalia Lost, and Fire Emblem Heroes has nothing to do with it. What did Yun do in Chapter 14? He walked into the throne room, and Morsaide was like, I'll let your sister go if you let me possess you, and Yun was like, let's do it. That's what happened. So yeah, but that's about it for this. Yeah, that's gonna do it for this time. I don't know when I'll live stream again, but I am currently working on some other projects that should be up in the next couple days, including my latest How to Play. And then the start of a new series I'm working on that I mentioned last time, my Let's Design series, which I have the voiceover recorded for it already, and I just need to edit it together. So, I will see you all next time. That's going to do it for today.